The government tried their hardest to kill this man, and if it wasn't for this video footage, they would have succeeded. At 7:30 a.m. on August 12, 2003, Juan Catalan was half asleep in the passenger seat while his girlfriend Alma drove him to his father's shop in Los Angeles, California, where he worked. Their 4-year-old daughter was also along for the ride, sat quietly in the back seat. As they were about to reach their destination, Alma noticed that a van had started following them. Juan checked the mirror and spotted it too. As they pulled into the shop's lot, Alma quickly parked, hoping the van would continue past. But it didn't. The van pulled in right next to them and stopped. Juan opened the door to step out and found himself staring straight into the barrel of a gun. In that split second, the only thought running through his head was, "I'm dead." In only a matter of 30 seconds, they were surrounded by several men in plain clothes with guns drawn, aggressively shouting, "Get down! Get down! Get down!" The entire situation was surreal. It seemed like they were being attacked by gangsters until the radio beeped in their hands and Juan realized it was actually the police. But why were they here? He watched his girlfriend scream at the police to let him go while their daughter sobbed in fear. Neighbors peeked out from their windows in disbelief, watching a peaceful morning turn into chaos. With so many men around, there was no use resisting. Juan eventually fell onto his knees with his hands behind his head. His mind buzzed with confusion, but everything went silent the moment he saw his dad peek out of the workshop. The one person Juan never wanted to disappoint. His words almost caught in his throat when he yelled, Dad, look at what they're doing to me." But his plea for help was shortly masked by an officer's angry command, who screamed at Juan's dad to shut the damn door. This wasn't a regular police arrest. It was an operation carried out by the LAPD's Special Investigations Section, an undercover unit with a deadly reputation. It was even nicknamed Death Squad because in most cases, their suspects never made it to booking. With a multi-million-dollar budget and just one arrest a week, this unit of 20 men was reserved for LA's most dangerous offenders. But why would they target a seemingly average family man on his way to work? The question kept ringing in Juan's mind as the officers threw him face down against the asphalt and cuffed his hands. They didn't read Juan his Miranda rights or give any explanations, simply pushed him into the van and took him away. Inside the van, Juan kept asking the supposed police officers, "Why is this happening?" According to California law, it is mandatory for the police to explain to a suspect why they're being arrested. But none of that happened here. Soon, Juan was thrown into a cold jail cell all alone, left to his raging thoughts and a sick feeling in the gut. He was losing hope that the police would give any clarification soon, but then he overheard a conversation between two of them. "Who's that?" asked one of the officers, and the other replied, "It's our 187 suspect." Penal Code 187. Homicide. Juan felt his heart drop. He knew then there would be no easy way out of this situation. Who had he supposedly killed? And why was he the suspect? After 6 agonizing hours of anxiety and raging thoughts, the cell's door finally opened. 2 LAPD detectives, Martin Pinner and Juan Rodriguez, entered with blank expressions. The calmness distressed Juan even more, urging him to ask, "You're getting me scared, dude. What's going on?" But the series of baffling questions that the officers asked seemed anything but related to a homicide. Like, where did he get his haircut? Where did he bank? Did he ever work at McDonald's? Was he ever in a dance crew? What were his teeth like? And finally, coming to the point, the officers asked, "Do you have any idea why you're here today?" To which Juan shrugged. That's when they pulled up a sketch of a man's face, which according to them, looked exactly like Juan. They added that multiple witnesses had seen him murder 16-year-old Martha Puebla on May 12, 2003. All color drained from Juan's face. "Please, that's not me," he pleaded, but the detectives weren't having any of it. They pressed him more by asking questions like, "Why did these people pick you out, Juan?" They didn't listen to Juan's suggestion to take a lie detector test, and kept on pointing out how they know that he is a killer and is simply denying it. Juan pleaded for his life. "Please, I'm begging you. I had nothing to do with this. I swear to God. I have 2 daughters that I love so much, man. I did not do this." "You killed somebody," the officer accused again. Confused and exhausted, he finally said, Those are very strong words right there. I would never kill nobody. And I'd never do anything to hurt anybody. Thought you went after the bad guys. After a continuous back and forth with the officers clearly trying to get a confession and Juan's refusal to submit, he is sent back to his cell, but not before leaving behind his final words. Whoever picked me out, I really hope deep in my heart that God forgives them one day, because I swear to God that I didn't do that. The officers had made one thing clear. They didn't see Juan as a suspect. To them, he was already guilty. But Juan would be fighting for more than just his freedom. He would be fighting for his life. You see, the prosecutor assigned to his case was none other than Beth Silverman, a name feared by every criminal in LA's criminal courts. Silverman was no ordinary district attorney. She was known as the Sniper because she had never lost a murder case, and she always pursued the death penalty. If Juan was convicted of Martha Puebla's murder, he would be executed. But who was Martha Puebla? On May 12, 2003, just past 10:30 p.m., 16-year-old Martha Puebla sat on the curb outside her home on Lull Street. It was an oddly calm Monday night in Sun Valley, and she was casually talking to her friend, Juan Ibanez. The two noticed a black Honda Accord with tinted windows circling the block. It came once, twice, and then a third time. Only this time, it didn't drive past. It slowed down to a crawl and eventually parked suspiciously close to them. A young man stepped out and walked behind Martha. In a cold voice, he asked, "Who are you?" Martha turned to look at him. "I'm Martha. You know me." Without a second's pause, the man pulled a 9mm handgun from the pocket of his sweatshirt and aimed it merely inches away from her face. And before she could react, he pulled the trigger. The bullet struck her just below the left eye, killing her instantly. Her friend, Juan Ibanez, made a run for it. Since he was a witness, the shooter couldn't let him escape, so he ran after him. Several shots were fired, but Ibanez managed to get away without getting hit. Neighbors began pouring out after hearing the shots, causing the shooter to jump back in the car and make his getaway. Within minutes, the streets erupted with screams, causing Martha's mom to burst out of the front door barefoot. When she reached her daughter's lifeless body, she screamed, "My God, she's dead." Police shortly arrived and immediately dispersed the crowd, roping off the scene. A cell phone lying next to Martha's lifeless body caught the officers' attention. They traced it back to her friend, Juan Ibanez. When officers caught up with him, he told them what little he could and later helped create a composite sketch of the shooter, a young Latino male, 19 to 25, stocky build, short hair, a mustache, and a small patch of facial hair beneath the lip. Meanwhile, when detectives at the scene of the crime realized the identity of the victim, they immediately rang homicide detective Martin Pinner. He was supposed to be off duty that day, but Martha wasn't just someone caught in a senseless act of violence. She was the key witness in another ongoing murder case that had begun 5 months prior. On November 27, 2002, just before 2 a.m., Martha was lying in her bed at home when she heard a soft tapping at her ground floor bedroom window. When Martha looked out, she saw her best friend, urging her to come outside. The friend's boyfriend, 18-year-old Christian Vargas, was waiting in his car parked in front of the house. Martha hesitated, but before she could make up her mind, a dark figure appeared from the shadows. He quietly approached Christian's car, and before anyone could react, gunshots rang out. The girls panicked. The friend dove in through Martha's window to seek protection. When everything went quiet, they stepped outside and slowly approached Christian's car. The sight was gut-wrenching. Christian was slumped in the seat, riddled with bullets, and barely clinging to life. "Help me," he whispered. But before help could arrive, Christian died. His murder was the first domino in a chain of events that not only exposed the brutality of gangs plaguing San Fernando, but also the ruthlessness and corruption of the authorities meant to bring them to justice. Police soon arrived at the scene, accompanied by detectives Martin Pinner and Juan Rodriguez. Amidst the interrogation, Martha's friend claimed that when the shots rang out, Martha had seen the killer and yelled, "Peps!" Peps was the nickname of Jose Ledesma, Martha's ex-boyfriend. But unlike Martha, he wasn't any neighborhood teen. He was a prominent member of a notorious gang in San Fernando, the Vineland Boys. The history of these gangs stretches all the way back to the 80s. At the time, it was the 18th Street Gang that ruled with a manpower of over 50,000. But within the organization, a rebellion arose. leading to the formation of the Vineland Boys, a branch that soon broke away from the 18th Street. The separation was seen as a betrayal, leading to a decade-long rivalry, and it gets more complex from here. Unlike the 18th Street Gang, which worked under the strict rules of La MA, also known as the Mexican Mafia operating inside US prisons, Vineland Boys were defiant. They refused to pay taxes or obey the hierarchy enforced by La MA. By 1999, the founder and backbone of the Vineland Boys was brutally murdered by the rival gangs. This devolved the gang into a loose structure controlled by senior members who called themselves the Shot Callers. In their eyes, the only way to enforce discipline was through fear and violence. In an attempt to survive and reclaim legitimacy, the Vineland Boys tried to reconcile with La MA in the early 2000s. But instead of redemption, they gained a reputation for extreme recklessness. Members of the Vineland Boys were considered among the most dangerous in Los Angeles. By 2002, they had spread deep into the San Fernando Valley and Burbank, dominating drug trafficking, money laundering, and even witness intimidation. It was in this intricate web of organized crime that Martha suddenly found herself entangled. Despite Martha's friends' initial claims that Martha had seen the shooter, Martha's own statement was completely different. She was well aware of the dangers that came with getting on the bad side of one of the most influential gangs in San Fernando. Whether or not Martha had actually seen anything that could help identify Christian Vargas's murder, the girl flatly denied that she had. Despite this, detectives Martin Pinner and Juan Rodriguez still honed in on Jose Ledesma. He was already a prime suspect in the murder of Enrique Acosta from November 2002. Jose Ledesma had been driving along Lankershim Boulevard with Juan Catalan's older brother, Mario Catalan, behind the wheel. Up in Sun Valley, north of Saticoy, Lankershim was their turf, and anyone who didn't belong there was seen as a threat. As they pulled up next to a black SUV at a red light, Jose shouted at the driver, "Where are you from?" But the answer must not have been satisfactory to him, because the next moment, he pulled a 9mm from his lap and opened fire. Enrique Acosta, the 26-year-old driver of the black SUV, died instantly, and a passenger was left wounded. Mario Catalan, by driving him and Jose away from the scene, became an accomplice to murder. When the cops conducted ballistic testing, they found that the same 9mm pistol that was used in Enrique's murder was also used to shoot Christian Vargas. This gave detectives probable cause to search through Jose Ledesma's home while he wasn't there. Hidden beneath a mattress was a loaded assault rifle and letters from incarcerated Vineland Boys members. It didn't take long for Jose to find out that the cops had searched through his residence and that a warrant had been issued for his arrest. In response, he, Mario Catalan, and Mario's girlfriend slipped out of California and into Mexico. They planned to stay low for a while and gather funds to hire a high-caliber defense attorney. But that plan backfired big time. 2 days later, Mexican authorities received a disturbance call at a Tijuana motel. Turns out Mario had a fight with his girlfriend, and when the cops arrived, Mario's girlfriend accused both men of being wanted for murder in Los Angeles. With that, both Jose and Mario were swiftly extradited back to LA by nightfall. As soon as they were booked, Detective Pinner and Rodriguez took charge and brought Jose Ledesma into an interrogation room. Placing a tape recorder on the table, they asked him a series of questions to try and get a confession out of him. Jose remained stubborn. He didn't call a lawyer. He just kept hurling insults and profanities at the detectives. "You got the wrong person, buddy," he said. To which Detective Pinner responded, "Okay, I don't believe you, and I have the evidence to prove it. I have multiple witnesses who are going to testify that you were the shooter." Pinner further added that he knew Jose was on his way to meet Martha the night Christian Vargas died, and that the prime witness had already identified him. He laid down a police photo lineup of 6 headshots, including the suspect and 5 other individuals, commonly referred to as a six-pack, in front of Ledesma, with his picture circled out and the words, "This is the guy that shot my friend's boyfriend, MP," scribbled alongside it. According to the detectives, Martha Puebla had decided to testify against Jose after all. Jose froze for a second, but tried to keep a straight face. "I don't even know a Martha," he said. After exhausting several tactics to get Jose to spill the beans, Pinner decided to change his approach. The detectives brought Mario Catalan into the interrogation room and revealed that a handgun had been recovered from their vehicle. That news sent visible shockwaves down Mario's spine, but the real giveaway was in the panic that would soon ensue. The two men were placed in adjacent holding cells, and a hidden microphone had been installed to record their conversations. The moment they were left alone, a hysterical Mario informed Jose that police found the gun. He desperately sought reassurance from Jose, who became increasingly agitated. This conversation didn't last long, but it further confirmed the handgun was indeed the murder weapon. Los Angeles County Prosecutor Beth Silverman, the same one who would later take on Juan Catalan's case, decided to consolidate the Christian Vargas and Enrique Costa homicides into a single trial. She went in with her usual death penalty if convicted prosecution approach. When the trial began 5 months after Christian's death, she called the 16-year-old Martha Puebla to the stand. After a basic exchange of introductions, she fired one hard question after another. But to each question Silverman threw at her, Martha gave the prosecutor nothing. "Did you see anyone that night? Did you hear anything?" "No," was all Martha responded every time. This should make one wonder, if Martha was so dismissive in court, why did she circle and sign the six-pack that Detective Pinner had shown to Jose Ledesma? But no one at the time questioned the contradiction, and 11 days after she took the stand, Martha was killed. At this point, there have been 3 homicides and no convictions. Since Martha's murder came only days after Jose's preliminary hearings, the detectives immediately zeroed in on the people who had been at the hearing. All attendees at the court were required to submit a driver's license or other ID. While shuffling through the audience records, the detectives' focus fell on one name, Juan Catalan, Mario's younger brother, a man that they believed had a strong motive for murdering Martha. Vengeance for testifying in his brother's case. Born in Los Angeles in 1978, he had come from a fairly normal family. His father, Mario Catalan Sr., had bought a house 15 to 20 miles away from Los Angeles, hoping for a bright future for his family. But unfortunately, it was filled with uncertainty the moment his son Mario Catalan Jr. started hanging out with the wrong crowd. Juan, who was young and looked up to his older brother, saw him bringing in stereos, car parts, and cash, and was immediately drawn in. He started joining his brother in heists, acting as his getaway driver while Mario broke into cars. But this eventually landed Juan in prison. That arrest came with a reality check that this wasn't the kind of life he wanted for himself. Since then, Juan decided that he would clean up his life and vowed that his first trip to jail would be his last. But even when he tried to steer clear of trouble found a way. On the day of his preliminary hearing for the murders of Enrique and Martha, Mario Jr. had pleaded with his family to attend. His brother Juan was the only one to attend. A courtesy that landed him in a kind of trouble he had never expected. After his interrogation, Juan was sent to the Van Nuys jail, where he was kept for 3 days before seeing a judge. When he finally stood before one, he wasn't given any real chance to speak. Just a cold transfer order to Los Angeles County Jail. That latter jail proved to be far worse. Their holding cells were built to hold 50 men at a time, but may have been filled up with up to twice that many. The inmates were divided into racial groups, with each one against the other, and led by so-called shot callers. Caucasians, African Americans, Latinos. You didn't pick a side, it picked you. Juan, being Latino, was silently marked the moment he stepped inside. Then a trustee, an inmate who had free movement within the jail due to perceived good behavior and trustworthiness, approached the Latino shot caller and whispered something through the bars. Juan couldn't hear all of it, but one sentence stood out. "Hey man, we've got somebody that's no good in here." Juan's blood ran cold. Even in a place overflowing with abusers, killers, and cartel thugs, there were still lines. Martha Puebla was 16. That meant they would think Juan was a child killer. "I'll get you the name after dinner," he heard the trustee say. Then, the shot caller smiled like he was about to be served his favorite snack at dinner. There was a sick anticipation in his eyes that made Juan immediately lose his appetite. Dinner finally came, and Juan stared at his untouched tray. He couldn't swallow a bite, knowing what was coming. But as fate would have it, a deputy later caught the trustee digging through the inmate files and put in solitary confinement before he could deliver Juan's name to the shot caller. But that near brush with death was only the beginning. Juan was continuously shuffled between Wayside and County, never being given any explanations for the move. And then finally, he was sent to a maximum security prison for the most dangerous criminals. There, he saw inmates getting double-crossed by their own people. People taking out their frustration from minor inconveniences on weaker members who weren't even responsible. Juan even saw a man get beaten so badly he lost consciousness in the corner of the cell, crying out for help that no one ever gave. A grown man yelling like a kid, Juan remembered, and nobody's coming. Then there were the frequent riots. Latinos versus African American inmates, 100 men crashing into each other with fists, trays, and makeshift weapons. It was a sound Juan could never forget, the kind that gets in your bones and never leaves. He could never tell what time it was, nor could he afford the luxury of sleeping in peace. Someone would always be awake, mumbling or plotting. It was hard to tell what was going on in people's minds, and who might be holding a grudge for someone you're completely unaware of, waiting for you to fall asleep for the last time. His only sense of the outside world came through the short phone calls he had with his girlfriend Alma every couple of days. He didn't want to be a burden on the family when times were already hard, and the guilt was eating away at him. His father's business was failing without him. Yet somehow, his father still managed to scrape together enough money to send Alma, so she could care for the girls. Alma tried paying Juan a visit in person as well, but when she brought their daughters with her, their reactions scarred the couple. Seeing their dad behind the glass broke them, something they could not get over easily. So the couple decided to never let the girls visit until Juan got out. Just when hope that would ever happen began to slip away, Juan recalled a faint memory. His cousin had once told him about a great lawyer that they'd been a filing clerk for, Todd Melnik.
Oh, ouch.
Oh, hey Grill, what's up?
Oh, hey, bro. Geez, I wish I had a great lawyer. You see, I received a workplace injury due to negligence of another party. Ouch.
Well, you could always contact...
Does this sound familiar to you? Well, if so, I might have a solution. For you! Hi, I'm Grill Burns. Have you ever heard of the Bill of Wrongs? Yeah, me neither. You know what I have heard of? The Bill of Rights. And so have our sponsors, Morgan & Morgan, because they defend your rights if you've been wronged. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm with over 1,000 attorneys and more than 100 offices nationwide. You can check out how much a client in Florida got. The insurance offered $350,000, but Morgan & Morgan got them a whopping $12 million. Another client was offered $0. You kidding me? Well, then Morgan & Morgan comes in and gets them $20 million. They've been fighting for people for over 35 years. Ready to battle it out if you end up working with them. Wiccaw! So listen up, if you get injured because of someone else's negligence, you deserve to get paid. And guess what? Their fee is free unless you win. You can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan by clicking the link below in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. You can just fill in a bit of info and click start your claim. Easy peasy, come on. Because you know what I always say? If you want a fortune of massive proportion, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming where our guy Juan found himself a spectacular lawyer too.
Juan reached out, and not long after, Todd walked into the jail and sat down across the glass. Juan didn't see the accusation in his eyes that he had seen in everyone else's. Todd got straight to business, asking about the details of the case and the authorities' threats of the death penalty. Then he leaned forward and asked Juan a simple question. Do you remember where you were? Juan paused and thought hard. Martha had been murdered months ago. He struggled to recall anything specific. After a few more questions, Todd ended their meeting with one sentence that made Juan feel like an elephant had lifted one of its feet from his chest. I'm gonna get you out of here. With that, Todd left as Juan sobbed in relief. When he later talked to Alma about the lawyer, she immediately reminded Juan that the murder had been on May 12th, Mother's Day. He'd gotten last-minute tickets for a Dodgers game, hoping to convince his mom to go, even though he knew she wouldn't. Coincidentally, Juan wasn't planning to go either, despite never missing a Dodger game in years. He changed his mind last minute and took his 6-year-old daughter, Melissa, cousin Miguel, and friend Ruben. That was it. That was his alibi. Juan quickly told Todd in his next meeting that he was at the Dodgers game that night, and with that, every little detail about the match started coming back to Juan. It was a tense battle between the home team and the Atlanta Braves. What started as a 4-4 tie later flipped entirely with the Dodgers losing 11-4. He even remembered stopping by the cart for baseball cards and snacks. After listening carefully, Todd asked Juan if he still had the tickets for the game, to which the man eagerly responded that he remembered keeping the ticket stubs as a keepsake. Now all that was left to do was for Alma to find the stubs from a game that happened months ago. But after ransacking through the place Juan told her to look, Alma found nothing. But Todd wasn't ready to give up just yet. He urged her to turn that place upside down if you have to, and that's exactly what she did. Finally, inside a Dodgers envelope, buried deep in a dresser drawer, she found the 2 ticket stubs. Juan got excited, but Todd gave him a reality check. Those stubs actually weren't going to be enough. All they proved was that someone had attended the game, not necessarily Juan. And even if his cousin and friend vouched for him, they were too close to be considered reliable witnesses in court. Todd now had to find evidence that showed Juan was physically, undeniably, in that stadium when the murder happened. Once the lawyer had the ticket stubs in his hand, his next move was to talk to the Dodgers themselves. He contacted Sam Fernandez, the senior vice president of the team, and told him the gravity of the situation. The VP, upon hearing that a man could possibly die, agreed to help. Using the seat numbers printed on the ticket stubs, the two began tracking down everyone who had sat near Juan that night, hoping one of them might testify. But it didn't pan out the way they'd hoped. Todd was able to talk to multiple people and practically pleaded with him to give a statement. Still, most of them gave vague responses, saying they didn't see him clearly enough to be comfortable testifying. No one wanted to put their name behind a memory they weren't confident about. Eventually, Todd decided to go for a different approach. He asked the VP about the Dodger Vision, the stadium's in-house recording system that captured live footage of the crowd throughout the game. With over 40,000 people in the seats that night, finding Juan in the footage was going to be like searching for a needle in a haystack. But Todd saw no other option. If he was somewhere in that footage, they had to find him. Thanks to the stubs, he only had to count the rows to determine that Juan had been sitting on the third base side, so every time a right-handed batter came up, the broadcast camera would swing toward the exact direction where Juan had been seated. Todd watched the whole footage slow down, rewinding and pausing countless times to scan through the grainy faces. The entire game was 3 hours long, so combing through each frame at that rate was grueling. In Todd's words, he could not afford to miss anything. Finally, after hours of mind-numbing skimming and scanning, he had a breakthrough. There, in the pixelated footage, was the blurry figure of Juan Catalan sitting next to his daughter. He finally had visible evidence of his presence at the Dodgers game that night. But there was one problem. The resolution of that clip was so poor that it was hard to make out Juan's features clearly. Todd's heart sank at the thought of the prosecution treating it as non-viable evidence. But the clock was ticking, and he had no choice but to present the evidence he had gathered so far in court. Juan's first preliminary hearing was set for December 17, 2003. After seeing the toll prison was taking on Juan, Todd knew he couldn't wait for a trial and needed to free that man as early as possible. He had even promised Melissa, Juan's daughter, that her father would be home in time for Christmas. When the hearing began, Juan Ibanez, Martha's friend and witness of her murder, took the stand. His description of the shooter had been used to form the sketch that, according to the detectives, was a spitting image of Juan Catalan, but he had never actually seen Catalan. Todd quickly realized it was the prosecution's intention to provoke a courtroom identification. The lawyer wasn't going to fall for it. He took off his suit jacket and draped it over Juan Catalan's head, strategically covering his upper body. With Catalan now hidden from Ibanez's sight, Todd could question the witness on the description of the shooter without it being influenced by his client's presence in the courtroom. The witness said the shooter had darker skin like his own, whereas Catalan had a more pale complexion. He also described him as having a stocky build, but Juan was rail thin, a beanpole, according to Todd. Lastly, Ibanez had said the shooter was just slightly taller than him at 5'5". After this, Todd stood beside his client. At 6 feet tall, the lawyer already towered over Ibanez, and Catalan was even taller, 6'1" in shoes. The courtroom even got a tape measurement of his height, which was clearly nowhere near 5'5". In the end, Todd removed the jacket from Catalan's face, and despite all of the discrepancies, when Ibanez saw him, he still identified him as the man who had killed Martha. This didn't faze Todd. He was expecting it. Next up was Detective Pinner, who testified that the killer had fled in a dark blue or black sedan, Toyota, Honda, or Chevy, with 5 tinted windows. But Juan didn't drive anything that matched those descriptions. He drove around in his girlfriend Alma's large Tahoe SUV. The only link Pinner could draw was that Juan had once gotten a ticket in a relative's black Maxima, but that had happened months before the murder, and Pinner had never verified whether that car had any tinted windows or not. Todd then targeted the root cause of it all, the alleged motive that the prosecution had been painting. He highlighted how absurd it would be for Juan to take Martha's life for Mario, since Mario hadn't been facing charges from anything Martha had testified. In fact, She had testified for a completely different case against Jose Ledesma for the murder of Christian Vargas. Mario was involved in the murder of Enrique Acosta, nothing Martha had ever testified about. At the hearing for those homicides, Mario's lawyer had even asked Martha directly if she had ever seen Mario before, and her answer was negative. She didn't even indirectly hint about anything to do with Mario Catalan during her testimony. Isn't that true? Todd pushed for a final confirmation. Not that I recall off the top of my head, replied Pinner. But regardless, Silverman and Pinner continued to cling to their revenge theory. Finally, Todd laid out his final cards on the table. Tangible evidence pointing toward Juan's presence at the Dodgers game that night. He presented the ticket stubs and the grainy video before the judge, but Silverman wasn't having any of it. She claimed she hadn't seen the evidence in advance, even though under California law, she had no right to, and the judge sided with her. Juan would have to spend 21 more days in that jail. After the preliminary hearing, Todd got down on one knee in front of Juan's daughter, Melissa, and, in a gentle voice, informed her that he won't be able to get her father out for Christmas, but that he would get him out. He knew he had to dig even deeper this time. In his next meeting with Juan, he asked if Juan remembered anything else that he hadn't mentioned so far. After a lot of contemplation, Juan shared a strange detail. I think they may have been filming something there. He remembered a security guard blocking the aisle when his daughter Melissa had wanted to go to the concession stand. There was a man walking up and down the stairs with a camera, clearly taking different shots. It was vague, but still better than nothing. So, Todd went back to Dodger Stadium, where he met with a staff member in the media relations department. He pulled out a large calendar book and started shuffling through its pages. All of them were blank until Todd saw one entry for May 12, 2003. It was an obscure production company name with a phone number. The real shock came when Todd dialed the number. It was HBO. Upon Todd's request, they connected him with the executive producer of HBO's hit show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Tim Gibbons. The moment the line switched, Todd said, "Don't hang up on me." He hadn't even explained anything yet. The lawyer told the executive producer about the stakes and how his client is in prison. Tim listened but explained, "We don't release pre-production footage. You'll have to wait until it airs in February." But Todd didn't have that kind of time. The next hearing was in January. "My client is facing the death penalty for something he didn't do," he said at his final plea. And that struck a chord because the producer said, "Let me talk to Larry David about it." Larry David was the co-creator of the TV show Seinfeld and star of HBO's Curb Your Enthusiasm. Todd had no idea who Larry David was, despite apparently being a fan of Seinfeld. Upon hearing the dire nature of the situation, Larry agreed to meet the lawyer the next day. Todd learned that on the day of Martha's murder, they had been shooting The Carpool Lane, Season 4, Episode 7 of the show at the stadium, where Larry picks up a sex worker and takes her to a Dodgers game. The production team had initially suggested that the idea was difficult, since they'd need to book a stadium and hire multiple actors to play the audience. But Larry had something else in mind. He wanted to shoot at a real live Dodgers game, posing an even greater challenge for the crew. The team entered the game at around 5 p.m. and decided to film the shot in 2 sections. What's interesting is that their placement was going to be completely random. They could have set up anywhere in that giant stadium. But lucky for Juan, they positioned themselves in the same block as him. Larry had deliberately chosen bad seats to fit the story, and the camera crew were working discreetly with long-distance lenses to be almost invisible to the audience. The next day, Todd went to the Curb Your Enthusiasm studio in Santa Monica and sat in the editing bay with the team. Engineers loaded 8 beta tapes, each with roughly 6 minutes of footage for him to inspect. One by one, they began scanning through each of them for any sign of Juan. Todd had almost lost hope when they got to the 5th tape, but then, suddenly, he spotted something. In a fleeting moment, a man in a white shirt holding his daughter's hand was stopped by security. Todd leapt from his chair. It was Juan. They rewound and confirmed it. And Juan wasn't just on that one tape. When he saw the rest of the tapes, he had been in 3 of them. This evidence could very well be Juan's ticket to freedom. Since the films were recorded with time codes, Todd immediately asked if they could see when the footage was taken. The first shot of Juan was at 8:55 p.m., the last at 9:15 p.m. And with that, Todd slumped back in his chair. He had the irrefutable proof that Juan was at the Dodgers, but it still wasn't enough. The murder had taken place at 10:32 p.m. They were still over an hour short. And just like that, the incredible footage they had found was nothing. Well, on its own at least. Prosecution had mentioned in the previous hearing how Juan had been confirmed within a 100 to 150 yard radius from the murder scene. Juan was dropping off his cousin Miguel at the time, so he could have easily left the game early and committed the murder. This put Todd back to square one. He needed to prove that Juan was at the game for a longer time. He went back and asked Juan if he remembered purchasing anything at the stadium, and though Juan recalled buying a lot of things, he didn't use a credit card, so there was no timestamp. Then Todd asked about cell phones, and that's when it hit him. Juan had mentioned that his girlfriend, Alma, had called him that night from a friend's phone when they were about to leave the game. Upon checking, they found a 49-second inbound call at 10:11 p.m. Todd then talked to Alma for confirmation, who said she had called him to ask if the game was over, and Juan had told her, "We're walking out of the stadium right now." The next thing Todd did was ring Tasha Boggs, a Nextel employee who had handled law enforcement requests for cell tower data. He requested Tasha to trace which cell tower was pinged when Juan received the 1011 call. It was tower NCA 6581, located directly across from Dodger Stadium, with a 1-mile radius. This confirmed that Juan must have still been at Dodger Stadium like he claimed. And as Todd prepared for Juan's next preliminary hearing, this time, he knew they had more than just a shaky alibi. They had hard proof. When the hearing resumed in January, Juan stared blankly ahead, making sure not to face the left side where Martha's family was sitting. He waited for Todd to come in and brief him, but the moment he entered, something felt different. He leaned in and whispered in Juan's ear, "It's over." Juan was confused, but it all quickly became clear. After presenting the HBO footage, Todd pulled out his trump card, Alma's phone call at 10:11 p.m., pinging from a cell tower that positioned him at Dodger Stadium. It was 16 miles from the murder scene. Juan couldn't possibly drive 16 miles, drop off his cousin, and circle the block 3 times in 16 minutes. The footage from Curb Your Enthusiasm proved that he was indeed at the game, so he couldn't have sent someone else with his phone to receive the call and create an alibi. Along with that, Juan's cousin, his friend, and his young daughter Melissa all presented their testimonials, how they had gone to the game together, how Juan had bought snacks for his daughter, and how they left after the last inning. The prosecution was speechless. In his final statement, he said, "This man would be facing the death penalty if he hadn't, by the grace of God, gotten Dodger tickets from someone the day before and invited these people and got caught on video from that HBO show. He's a lucky man." He paused and then continued, "He sits here before this court innocent of the charges that have been placed before him. They are very serious charges, and somebody is still walking around the San Fernando Valley that's responsible. There wasn't much left to fight for on the prosecution side, but they kept pushing on how credible Ibanez was and their so-called motive evidence. But eventually, the final verdict came in. Judge Leslie Dunn, with calculated words, announced Juan's fate. I do not have any suspicion that the defendant committed this crime, and this case is dismissed." The courtroom erupted with cheerful applause. Juan teared up at the thought of being able to see his daughters again. It was over. When he came outside, his family was waiting for him, and they all joined in a group hug. Juan even pulled Todd in to share the wholesome moment. Happy ending, right? Well, not quite. Remember when Christian Vargas had been killed? The LAPD had released a search warrant for Jose Ledesma's home. Well, they also released one for Mario's, which was the Catalan family home. In that raid, the cops found drugs that originally belonged to Mario Jr., but he was already in custody. They threatened to arrest Juan's father or older brother for drug possession, just so they could charge someone for the drugs. At that moment, Juan stepped in to take the hit, just so he could protect his family. Now, even with Juan's murder charges dismissed, Silverman wasn't going to stop until he was convicted with something. So she took the drug charge case and demanded Juan serve 2 more weeks in prison. Todd, upon hearing this, tried proposing a settlement. Los Angeles had held Juan for nearly 6 months for a crime he didn't commit. Why not credit him for time served and call it a day? However, Silverman refused and warned that if Juan didn't go back to jail, he would be put on trial and could face a 5-year sentence for possession. Juan had no choice but to walk back into the same system that had nearly cost him his life. Juan was then placed in a cell filled with African-American gang members who had recently lost 2 of their members to a Latino gang. Juan was the only Latino put in that cell. Perhaps he was put there because he had just made an embarrassment out of the LAPD and the prosecution. Or perhaps it was just an extremely unfortunate coincidence. Regardless, he had escaped 1 death sentence, just to be served another. In the cramped cell, Juan could feel the inmates stare, drilling holes into his skull as they whispered, "An eye for an eye." Juan stayed awake for days at a time, fearing that as soon as he let his guard down, they would kill him. Then, on the last night of his sentence, The gang's trustee came in carrying some blankets. "Here's what you ordered," he announced to his fellow gang members. But Juan knew better. "If you know anything about jail, that's how you deliver a knife," he said. That night, Juan knew that staying awake was not going to guarantee his survival anymore. He called his girlfriend Alma to say goodbye and told his daughters how much he loved them. Juan couldn't believe it. He had fought so hard for his freedom, only to be killed the night before it was within his grasp. Disheartened, Juan lay down on his bed and waited. Just then, the deputy sheriff came to check the cell. "Are you all right?" he asked Juan. Among gangs, there's only one person worse than a child murderer: a snitch. So if Juan had told the sheriff anything, and the official didn't decide to do anything about it, Juan would have practically signed his death certificate. One of the gang members interrupted before Juan could decide how to answer. "Come on, Sheriff. We're all right." But the seasoned sheriff wasn't buying it. He called Juan down from his bunk and put him in a cell with all the Latino members. Juan Catalan survived his last night in jail. Once he was released from prison for good, Juan sued the city of Los Angeles and the LAPD, claiming wrongful arrest, false imprisonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The case was eventually settled at $320,000. In the same year, the FBI joined in on the investigation of Martha Puebla's case as part of a larger operation against the Vineland Boys. Detective Rodriguez and Pinner were quietly removed from the case. Rodriguez was assigned to auto theft, while Pinner stayed in homicide investigation under strict supervision. The real culprit in Martha Puebla's murder was finally revealed in 2005 from that same hidden microphone installed in Jose Ledesma and Mario Catalan's adjacent holding cells. Jose was recorded making a call using the jail payphone. "Cokester, do you know that lives near my house? Her name starts with M. I need her to disappear. She is dropping dimes." It was a direct order to Javier Covarrubias, aka Cokester, to kill Martha. The recording had apparently been ignored for years, after it was badly transcribed twice by an external firm. But during the trial preparations for Christian Vargas's murder, Spanish-fluent officers reviewed it, which led to the truth finally being exposed. LA Magazine puts it well. Police recorded the call, but the CD sat in Detective Pinner's desk, unheard. If he had listened within 5 months, he could have saved Martha's life. Within 8, he wouldn't have arrested an innocent man for the crime. Within a year, he could have freed the innocent man he arrested. But not only had the evidence of the hit order been there the whole time, the hit should have never been ordered in the first place. Remember how Martha had circled Jose Ledesma on the six-pack, indicating that she had seen him shoot Christian. But when she was brought to testify in court, she testified that she did not see who did it. Strange, right? Well, turns out Martha had never dropped any dimes. The circled photo, the message, and the signature were fake. Forgeries created by detectives Rodriguez and Pinner. Experts like Dennis Kilcoyne of the California Homicide Investigators Association tried defending the tactic, saying detectives could often lie to suspects about having DNA evidence against them or forged documents. But even they highlighted the basic lack of common sense in this entire play. You're not going to be telling gang members, "Miss Brown down the street saw you doing this," because you put their lives in jeopardy. Additionally, if the police believe that such acts have put the person in danger, it's standard procedure to warn them and provide witness protection. But Martha's parents shared in an interview how they received no such warning from the LAPD. This was further proved by detective logs that showed no indication of the detectives warning Martha or the parents. In 2008, the federal task force was able to crack a plea deal with the arrested Vineland Boys, Mario, Jose, and the shooter, Javier, aka Cokester. All of them pleaded guilty to killing Martha to avoid the death penalty and were sentenced to life in prison without parole. That same year, Martha's parents filed a federal lawsuit of their own, claiming their daughter had been killed by being unwillingly used as bait. In the end, the jury released its final verdict, and it wasn't what they had expected. Martha's parents were held 80% responsible for their daughter's death, whereas the detectives only 20%. The family was then awarded $1 as a settlement. Their sole reasoning for the decision was that they let their daughter be in contact with dangerous people and were negligent. Many felt the jury's decision was unfair, since Martha was not killed due to her correspondence with the gang members. It was only when detectives used her as a false witness that she lost her life. Even though the real killers were caught and Juan narrowly avoided being executed for a crime he did not commit, the justice system failed, costing one innocent person their life and nearly another in the process. Today, Juan lives a peaceful life with his family and is still working hard at his father's workshop. His and Martha's story serve as a powerful reminder that sometimes truth alone doesn't lead to justice. It could take timing, persistence, and sheer luck to survive a broken system. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support all of the people who worked hard to make this video, the best thing you can do is hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and watch another one of our videos, like this one about 3 cases that were finally solved by regular, everyday people like you and me, and a 4th mystery that currently needs your help.